Over the last week, we've seen the devastation that has occurred as a consequence of the Hurricane Irma. And we have certainly seen what's happened in the Caribbean. Tonight, we have two special guests. We have Ambassador Anton Edmunds from the island of St. Lucia, as well as John Green, who is chairman of the Caribbean Relief and Recovery Alliance, to talk about what efforts are going to be underway and the kind of help they'll need. And we're so pleased to have both of you.
Thank you.
I'm thrilled, and thank you for this last-minute invitation, which is so timely, given what we're seeing in the news and the devastation that it's unimaginable.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
We very much appreciate it.
And I should also add, you just got accredited last week as ambassador from St. Lucia
Yes.
to the United States, as well as you are a permanent representative to the Organization of American States.
Indeed.
So congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
And we're happy to have you.
Thanks.
Yeah. So let's talk about this, because we've all been watching the news. And it's truly, for some time there was no attention on what happened in the Caribbean. In the last 3 days, I'd say, the last 4 or 5 days, we've really seen tremendous attention from the press. And I'm sure it's far greater than what actually being talked about. But I know St. Lucia was lucky,
Indeed.
but other places were not.
We were indeed very, very lucky in the sense that we were further south.
Right.
And unfortunately, what the attention is sort of unwanted as it relates to the kind of devastation that we've seen in our broader hemisphere, in our broader region. And, for every picture that we see in terms of a home wrecked, our thoughts are always about the families.
Right.
And in essence, how do small emerging market economies rebound? How do they survive this kind of activity? And one of the things that we're very much focused on, not only myself and the diplomatic corps from the region, but others, including the Alliance, is how do we build back better? How do we strategically engage so that we can ensure that we have a region that, heaven forbid, we have this kind of activity again, but we have a region that can survive it and can excel.
Right. And I know in like I said, in St. Lucia you were fortunate, but turning to Mr. Green and John, and I know you've put this alliance together very quickly, but there's a lot of power and energy behind it, and so
absolutely,
thank you for doing that, because now we have to focus on recovery and relief.
Yes.
But your country, you're from Antigua.
Yes, Antigua Barbuda.
Antigua Barbuda.
Yes.
And it got hit tremendously. I mean, wiped out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you again for having me here and allowing the Caribbean Disaster Relief Alliance, Relief and Recovery Alliance to speak about what we are doing, both short-term and long-term. Antigua Barbuda was the first place the hurricane hit, but more Barbuda than Antigua, where 95% of all buildings on the island were basically wiped out. We were blessed, lucky, whatever word you want to use there, because we only had unfortunately one death. Barbuda has about 16,000 residents. And so that was one little blessing among the whole experience. When this alliance was put together on the 8th, when we called a meeting together, we wasn't thinking about
Irma?
one island here or there. We were thinking about the Caribbean as a community, because that's how we have always looked at that here. We had about 100 people in a basement who came there with the understanding that their help was needed to address a critical issue of the hurricane and people's situation of not having a place to live. The hurricane rendered a lot of people homeless. There are a lot of issues. And so we said, let's get together, let's talk about what we can do now. And so we discussed the whole thing of the short term of relief right now. So we started collecting items, We contacted the embassies and the for Antigua and Barbuda. We contacted the VI association. They were part of the meeting, and we started collecting items that would go to the Caribbean to relieve those who were still in distress, and so that's going on right now. But we have a more long-term goal of putting things in place, of supporting organizations already in existence. That's why we're an alliance. We're not trying to take over any of the existing organizations' activities, but we want to be able to support them. We want to be a conduit through which they do what they do for the people of the Caribbean islands. And so that's why we were formed. We have committees that are handling specific tasks in the alliance. There are a number of events coming up for donations and contributions. But we are handling this in a way that in preparation for the next time, because there will be a next time. As the ambassador mentioned about global warming and all that, there's a conversation to be had on that and how it impacts the Caribbean and what we can do to be resilient, what kind of policies we can put in place, what type of infrastructure we can put in place. And that's something that is more long-term concern of ours, because we don't want to be back here next year or year after, whenever another hurricane hits, to be saying we need to figure out shelter. We need to figure out what's going to happen with children going to school after the hurricane has passed. So those are some long-term policy and concerns that we need to look at. But for now, the alliance is strong. We have a lot of talented people on the alliance. And we will work with any organization. We want to work with all the embassies. We will be working with the ambassador as the head of the CARICOM.
The OECS.
OECS.
Don't give me much more than I have.
Ahead of the OECS in this region. So we'll be working with the ambassador to do a lot of these things. We are not looking for glory and to be patted on our back. We want solutions. We're solution-focused alliance, and that's what we're there for.
Because I know when Haiti, of course, with the earthquake, which was over, we think about, 15 years ago.
That's right.
Right?
I was there.
People have forgotten.
Yes. And that's a concern, again,
that's a concern,
of
and
the
that's
alliance.
why the alliance wants to
And that's
sustain.
another reason, and one of the things we mentioned in our first meeting, that we don't want to go back and see the Haiti situation where we did a lot of good things and we had a lot of good intentions, a lot of stuff left the U.S. through the Caribbean from the Caribbean diaspora, intentions of helping the Haitians, but we're still seeing the suffering and some of the things that we expected to have happened then apparently didn't happen because people are still intense. The hurricane actually touched Haiti, and they're suffering now. I just received some information today that said that there are quite a few hundred of people were affected. Their tents were swept away, flooding, and these are people who were affected by the earthquake, and from then to now, no proper infrastructure, nothing was put in place to help these people. So we want to make sure that this is not repeated in the islands, because something else is going to happen sometime soon.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, well,
and
we don't know
when it's going to happen. So we need to be prepared to address these issues in a more holistic and long-term and sustainable way.
I just got the sense that with Harvey, and so Harvey had an impact as well. I mean, and it was, of course, the first one, but no one talked about it as much in terms of how it impact, the impact it had on the Caribbean. I thought it was more focused on the main, U.S. and Houston. And, am I right? I mean,
you're right, because I mean the impact was minimal, in the sense that you had some beach erosion and tropical storm in St. Vincent, but
Barbuda though.
But Barbuda, when you see the devastation of an Irma and you see, the wreckage. It appeals to the best and the worst in terms of the ability to go out and capture the images of something like that. It's the unfortunate thing, though, and the harsh reality is timing-wise, that this is one after the other. So in other words, it was this is a part of a new news cycle.
Right.
And I think the concern that the Alliance has is the concern that I think we should all have. You have Harvey, then you had Irma in Barbuda, and then of course, I mean, a couple of days afterwards, we were tracking Miami and we were tracking Florida.
Right.
So we had moved away from Barbuda for a little bit, and we had focused elsewhere. And the grounding that I think, especially from a Caribbean perspective, that we have to understand is that Harvey impacted the diaspora. There's a huge diaspora community in the United States. There's a link back to the Caribbean because there are remittances that come back. Irma impacts, of course, the region, and then as a Caribbean population, in many respects, I mean, we're all over the place. So you're finding that we have St. Lucian nationals in St. Martin. St. Martin is a Dutch protectorate in a sense, but we have to now mobilize to figure out how do you address the fact that you have nationals of your country. You weren't damaged, but you have nationals of your country in another one. And then we get into some of the minutiae of politics, where my role was supposed to be head of the Eastern Caribbean effort, which includes Antigua and Barbuda and St. Kitts and Nevis. But when you go further afield and you talk about the U.S. Virgin Islands, where there are a lot of nationals from my country and Dominica who are there, technically speaking, it's not my area. But from a hemispheric perspective and from a Caribbean perspective, it is my area because we're all interconnected. And that's one of the things that I think that we have to take away from this. And as we start looking at response efforts, resilience, policy. We have to look back to this as a Western Hemisphere issue.
Oh, absolutely.
And it becomes, it sort of starts to sink in that this is not a one-off, that we have to be engaged regularly.
Right. And how many countries were in this last?
In this last go round, I mean, if you...
6 or 7.
6 or 7.
6 or 7.
You have the Dominican Republic, I mean, Haiti for the most part, the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Martin and St. Martin, so the French and the Dutch sides, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis.
So St. Kitts and Nevis was also
minimally.
I thought minimal.
Minimally. St. Thomas and St. Croix. So
Tortolo, Anguilla.
And certainly St. Thomas was one we...
Anguilla.
St. Bart's.
St. Bart's.
No.
So it's
St. Bart's was almost, I thought it was quite...
Very bad.
Devastated.
Yeah,
devastated too.
So sort of the alphabet soup of the Caribbean in terms of the countries that have gotten damaged, and it's if you look at Barbuda alone, numbers I've heard $250 million to rebuild.
Oh yeah,
so,
easily. Yeah.
Right.
Just
so
on Barbuda.
Exactly.
Yeah, minimally. Yeah.
Minimum. So when you start looking at other countries that we may not be thinking about, it's in the millions. If not hundreds of millions, as it relates to putting people back on their feet. And we're still in the hurricane season.
Right.
And we're still in the hurricane season.
We still have another, month and a half or 2 months?
A month and a half.
Yeah.
November.
So.
I didn't realize it was, yeah, so that's frightening. It's,
it is, can be.
I mean, obviously I know the August, late August, September.
That's right.
Mid-September, you know.
Yeah.
But you still have, of course.
One of the main concerns of the Alliance is that people don't forget easily, because we have a tendency to something happen and then a little time passes and then we go back to something. We don't want people to forget the people in the Caribbean.
Right.
And again, the ambassador spoke about solutions being in Houston, but there are Caribbean people all over the place, so it's all of us. And so we want people to pay attention to the fact that we are very vulnerable. Whereas here, if there is an evacuation order, you can drive north and get out of the zone.
Right.
In the islands, you don't have that luxury to be able to get away from it. So people are going to be impacted. Our resilience program has to be one where we are able to shelter in place. Where we have that protective means, and so that's going to come with some creative and new way of thinking about shelters.
Right.
And just don't call a school a shelter because it has concrete
Right.
or it's big. I mean, but to look at how you're going to make sure that that school is, or the church, or the hospital, make sure that those infrastructures can stay in place.
And sustain any
And
kind
yeah,
of impact.
with this,
yes,
yeah,
Sure.
for
So
over the
it's-
long term, and that's what we're seeing now. The hospital in Barbuda is gone.
Right.
There was a doctor.
Really, that's
the
awful.
doctor was there speaking about the fact that he had to take the medication that was in the water to treat the few people that were around.
That's
Have nothing.
interesting.
There's no school. I mean, the people, even the first responders there, had nothing,
Had
so they could
nothing,
not
yeah.
go out and do what they would
No,
need to
that's
do
really-
to help people. So the island is evacuated now. They're all in Antigua.
Yes.
They did that because Jose was on his way.
Oh, geez. So we have to talk
Shortly
about
after,
that.
yes.
We're going to, John, I want to cut because I want to talk more about what the Alliance is doing and what we can be, doing as a community. But we're going to take a short break and then we'll come back and
Absolutely.
finish that. Okay.
Absolutely.
You're watching The Next Word. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.
Every day across America, excess food is gathered by a network of good people at local food banks, giving hope to millions of children who struggle with hunger. They've earned their wings, and you can too. Together, we can solve child hunger. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
Welcome back. You're watching The Next Word. Tonight we're having a conversation about the devastation that's hit the Caribbean. We have Ambassador Anton Edmunds, who is the ambassador from St. Lucia's to the United States, as well as John Green, who is chairman of the Caribbean Disaster and Recovery Alliance. And we're going to talk about what they're doing to help the people, and a very resilient people of the Caribbean. And resilient is the key word. It really, the people of the Caribbean have really suffered so much, and it seems like it's getting worse. We had Harvey, and we've had Irma, and we may have Jose, and we've had earthquakes, and you've had, it's just, it really in the line of fire. The Caribbean's, my heart and our hearts bleed for the people.
Well, we are. There's a certain inevitability in terms of where we're located as it relates to hurricanes.
Right.
Obviously,
And earthquakes.
The impact of climate change is real to us. And in many respects, stuff incidents like Irma are a wake-up call in terms of land management, land planning, how we build, where we build, where our population centers are. We've all been traditionally trading communities, so we're all been close to the water, so the ships can come in. But we're starting to realize that maybe we need to plan a little bit differently and move further inland. We've had incidences in the past, in the case of Dominica, where we've had landslides because of rain and people building on hillsides. So it's a wake-up call in many respects, and it's cyclical. Every year we know that there's going to be a hurricane.
Right.
Increasingly, yes, earthquakes. We're going to be touched by them. Mexico was touched by an earthquake recently. Haiti a couple of years ago. So the challenge for us is to address the immediate needs, obviously, of our people in the region, but also pivot a little bit to the international community and look at how we build, look at how we manage infrastructure projects, look at how we connect effectively with the development, the donor community, and equally as importantly is with our diaspora communities as well, in terms of making sure that we keep engaged. As we talked about earlier on, the impact of Harvey impacts us in the region because it's our community, even the community in Florida. A lot of West Indians in the Miami area. So we're focused back home in terms of what we need to do, but we have people that make this country the great country that it is, that we also have to track as well and make sure that they're doing well. So there's an element of of us really having to ground the impact of Irma into, sort of cement it a little bit and create a very robust and integrated action plan so that we're all connected in terms of what we want to see implemented in the region. So it means those like myself within the diplomatic corps working very, very closely with our diaspora communities, working very closely with associations that have skills that maybe we haven't looked to in the past.
Right.
And being able to afford them the opportunity to step in, to help us identify solutions. It's a little bit of an ego check as well, because at the end of the day, coming from a small country like my own, you realize you can't do it alone,
Right.
that you do have to depend on those who care. I mentioned the development community and the donor
Right.
community, but also people outside who can advocate on your behalf.
Right.
So there's a certain interconnectiveness that an activity like this should make us more aware of, and should sort of help us in terms of a roadmap and a plan that is all-inclusive versus what we traditionally do, which
Right.
is we tend to sort of stick to our own little parochial interests.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's the reason for the alliance.
Exactly.
The fact that you've formed it, it's been formed as a whole
Yes.
to bring in all the efforts.
Absolutely. Well, we're 501 C3. We have all those designation completed. We have a website, and we would like people to
great.
go to that website, cdra-inc.org,
Okay.
and they can volunteer or they can donate.
Right.
We also have area on the site that you can go and get information about what's going on in the region, what's going on in the Caribbean, what's going on in Antigua, what's going on in Barbuda, the efforts that are being made. We will include some of the actions of the ambassador spoke about, some things that people can do, some suggestions that people may be able to put forward. We don't want to take over any existing organization's operations. We just want to be a clearinghouse. We want to be a conduit. We want to be a place where people can get information to be able to resolve the issue. The ambassador speaks about ego, but our ego is more on the side of getting things done,
Right.
rather than being looked at and getting patted on the back as an organization,
Right.
as an alliance. So that's very important to us. We have events coming up on the
Yep.
23rd. We have a Caribbean Jug Fest activity in the National Harbor, and we will be featured there,
wonderful.
and we will be collecting donations, and people can make a contribution to the relief effort. One of the things that we're doing is that we're trying to work through the embassies. For Barbuda, we're working through the New York and the Miami offices, more than New York, because
Right.
they can ship things. Miami has a little bit of struggle. We can still do that, but they have a little bit of
Right.
struggle. We're getting requests from Houston. We're getting requests from many places in Texas. They have a lot of stuff, some surplus stuff, and they would like to give us.
That's great.
So we are actually looking for the funds to be able to ship these things to the island. I spoke to someone today from the Caribbean Community Chamber of Commerce in Texas. So they have 3 containers that would like to
That's great.
get sent to the islands with a lot of different stuff, but they don't have the money to be able to ship those containers. This is the type of things that the Alliance would like to step in and try and help them to find the resources to send these things off.
Right.
So,
We've talked about
that's
this,
part
right.
of our goals, is when people having these struggles with getting things to the island, that we can step in and assist them in finding those resources to get items to the island.
John, can I ask you, in terms of the items, I mean, are they baby products or
Yes,
medical, any kind of medical?
Absolutely. There are a lot of need
related-
for baby products. There are a lot of need for medical supplies.
Right. Like
Again,
what?
as I
Can
said,
you tell us?
they need like bandages. They need basic medication,
Really?
aspirins, Tylenol, just basic stuff. Everything
Right,
was washed
right.
away during the
Wow.
storm, especially in Antigua.
And the hospital,
in
of
Barbuda.
course,
The hospital is no longer there. I'm sure it's the same thing in St. Martin and some of these other places. We need these things. They need tops. Some people who just barely they have their homes, the roof is gone, but if they could get some tarps, they can go back and at least start some type of semblance of recovery.
Right, right.
But they have no roof on their homes, so some tarps to assist them with at least going back to their homes and salvaging and to get their lives back together. We need generators because power is going to be off for a very, very long time. And, communication, everything is dependent on that right now. People can't charge their phones. Right. They can't do anything. We have need for in Barbuda, especially, and I know some of the other islands, fishing is a main way of people making their living. And that was totally disrupted. A lot of people lost all of their...
their boats?
Their boats are gone.
Oh, geez.
Their fishing equipments are gone. The need is great. And we have on our website, actually, a list of the needs.
Do? Okay.
And people can go to the website and see the full list of needs. And that's updated as we get it. And this information is coming from an official assessment
of from
the islands.
Needed. That's good.
And that's where how we put everything we put on our website gets vetted. Is this official?
Right.
And then we will put it on our website. If it's not coming from the islands, coming from an official assessment, we're not going to tell people that. We don't send out any information of groups that are collecting money unless we are sure that these are bona fide groups. All those things. The integrity is important to us.
Absolutely.
Accountability.
And the
transparency. Those are important things as we go about asking people to contribute to a very important cause.
Right.
We don't want people to have a fatigue about, we gave before and they never got to where it needs to be. That's the main thing for our organization, for our alliance, is to be accountable to people's contribution so that you can always show them where it went.
Right.
That's a very important thing
So
for us.
the alliance, because we are in Montgomery County, Maryland, and is the alliance based?
The alliance is based in the DMV area.
Right.
But we are looking to have partnerships with other organizations in other parts of the U.S. We will be officially having MOUs with some of these organizations. We will have relationships with them. We'll have official documented relationships with them so they can reach out to us and we can have dialogue as to how, what solutions are there. We don't have all the answers. And so we look into every part of the Caribbean diaspora for suggestions, for ideas, for sustainable development ideas as going forward, because we have to do better. We have to be better prepared because it's going to happen again. All right.
Right. It's a full-time job, and my hat's off to you, John, because you've taken on a huge responsibility.
We have a strong support group. We have we have people who are already in business.
Right.
We have people out there. We have people from the U.S. retired generals and captains.
Wonderful.
Of Caribbean descent, and they have put their weight behind it. They put their expertise behind us, and they're all part of our organization to push this thing forward. This is not for now. We're not looking at this after Hurricane Irma and all the other hurricanes that may or may not come, God forbid. In this season, we're looking for a long-term solution, proactive strategies, policies, supporting a lot of the work that the OECS will be doing under the leadership of the ambassador. We are looking for long-term solutions,
and long-term support. So if if they do want to come in and help and be part of this long-term effort, they go to your website. They can call you, John.
They go to the CDRA-inc.org.
Okay, so
CDRA-inc.org, and they will be able to volunteer.
Okay.
They'll be able to donate. And if they just want information, they can go to info@cdra-inc.org.
Right. So that's...
Yes.
And also, besides just volunteering, of course, being part of the whole long-term effort.
Absolutely.
So it's more than, it's a long-term commitment, but it's
we will have more public forums to invite more people, because this is not about just the board of directors of the CDRA. We want to get more input from everyone. So we will have forums, we have regular meetings, strategic meetings. We will invite every and anyone who wants to make an input into this endeavor.
That's great. And then I want to have you come back.
Thank you.
And Ambassador, I want to say your Prime Minister is coming in October,
Yes.
and I know he'll have lots to talk about in terms of, just setting up a resilient platform, right, that can sustain what's going to happen, not just in the next 3 weeks, but certainly in the next 2 months or the next year.
That's right.
Because, as I said, the people in the Caribbean are in the line of fire.
I'm looking forward to him coming into town because he's very much a businessman, but I think
Right.
the issue of building back better and
Is
ensuring
absolutely.
that we have mechanisms that can survive long term, it's critical. And I'm looking forward to his engagement at the World Bank in terms of speaking to the staff and the leadership there, as well as us making the rounds in town
Right.
at state and at other
Right.
agencies,
Right.
maybe on the Hill as well, to
Right.
sort of start to continue the
dialogue.
conversation.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
I want you, Beth.
Thank you.
We have to keep this
We'll be happy to be
dialogue
back.
Look
going.
forward to it.
Right?
Very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You've been watching The Next Word. You can see us on every night except Thursday. We hope you liked the show, and please, we need your help. Thank you. Have a great night.